Before we start today's video, I thought I'd take the opportunity to just say directly to Chantal Marie, I have intentionally been positive towards you. My reason for that was because I wanted to give you the best opportunity with the best information to make you understand that you still have a chance to undo whatever damage it is that has been done to you already. Damage which is typically, or was typically, listed in the description to all your videos. You have recently taken it upon yourself to ignore that, even after seeing your doctor, getting a diet plan that was customized to you, and have summarily quit diets altogether. To that I say I am very disappointed. I would play the Hercules clip, the very well-known memed clip, but I render in 1080p and don't want to be rendering that as well. I'm not sure how many times you can polish a turd before it just looks like a pixelated mess. But you all know the meme anyway, so it doesn't matter. Moving on from that, and I will address that in part 2. Yes, we will definitely be addressing that in part 2. Moving on from that, we're going to talk about what happened over the weekend in the United Kingdom. The huge increase in votes on the .gov petition requesting that Article 50 be revoked. For 10,000 signatures, you get a governmental response. For 100,000, it might get debated. That's actually quite convenient because it's a possibility that Article 50 could in fact be revoked by the MPs. Something which I discussed with Skog, dear patron and friend of mine, going to see Gloryhammer in October, woot, discussed on his Factorio stream when he and Joe Shade were talking about this at great length, and I made some very interesting points I want to repeat. Over the weekend also, though, was a rather interesting protest, which had a number of hashtags trending. Revoke Article 50, hashtag the People's March, hashtag the People's Vote, hashtag Put It to the People March. It kind of spiraled quite a bit. Oh, and hashtag Put It to the People. These are the ones that got the most traction. Caroline Lucas tweeting, "We are a popular uprising." No, you're not. You're a very annoying, irksome group of idiots who refuse to accept the result. We voted on this. You lost. You are now at this point rather persistent Remoaners. We voted to leave. You out-of-touch, feckless moron. And I don't mean out-of-touch in the sense of what happened with Article 50 and the Brexit stuff. You're a Green MP. You're out of touch anyway. I've seen Brighton. Great job emptying those bins, by the way. There was a number of videos circulating, In them I noticed that parents are using their children as props. Well, aren't you a great bunch of morons? You don't use kids who are not even old enough to vote. Hell, they're not even half the age to vote. You don't do that to make your point, thinking that they could understand the vastly complex issue about membership to the European Union. Then again, I don't have kids, so what do I know? I don't know anything, fucking boomers. With all of this, there were a number of articles, and I think it worthwhile talking about what could happen next. Because while there were potentially over 1 million people on this march, the People's Vote March, 17.4 million people voted against that. Notice how they're not really complaining. I mean, there is a planned protest, I think, on March 29th, but it could also be a simultaneous celebration, depending on what happens in Parliament this week. And this is where it really comes down to who the MPs stand for. Do they stand for the result? Do they stand for their constituents who may have voted for it but they themselves vote against it? They themselves being the MP in question voting against the interests of the constituents that voted leave. Majority. Leave, that is. Do they vote for something within their own interest, or do they just do it for lols? Part of me hopes lols is the majority, but should this not go through, or we don't do a no deal instead, there is going to be a consequence. This is not a threat from me. This is me stating what I believe what would happen if we don't leave with either a deal or leave with no deal. If we don't leave, the parties that have voted Remain, even though their constituents voted Leave, need to resign. And by that I mean they need to because they're not going to win the next election, which will be in a rather quick time frame. In the sense that if you vote against the people, you will have to call a general election because you will have betrayed the democratic process that forced Theresa May after 6 long months to trigger Article 50 in the first place. Originally, the Brexit referendum was advisory, but the turnout being as high as it was, and the result as emphatic as it was, David Cameron had no choice but to stand down. Now yes, as Jonathan Pye correctly pointed out, this was because of a threat of a protest vote because a contract was breached, in the sense that 4 million people voted UKIP. That's a lot of voters the Conservatives lost. You need to address why they wanted to protest against you, and it had nothing to do, of course, with you betraying them at all, did it now? No. Add to that you were also afraid of losing many, many seats to UKIP. Now imagine if it doesn't happen at all. If Brexit is negated under one of the 7 options that are on the table for Theresa May this week, and I will address each one in turn momentarily. This isn't just for the Conservative Party though, this is also for Labour. SNP, meh, no one really gives a shit. Liberal Democrats, again, no one really gives a shit. But for Labour and the Tories, the problem is, if they now vote against no deal or the deal in question, forcing a second referendum or for Article 50 to be revoked, again I will go to those and the other 5 in a moment, they are going to lose many seats, both parties. They're going to lose them because they voted against what the constituents voted for. For doing that, the ultimate betrayal, I can see many parties, 2 parties, losing up to 100 seats each. Because you're forgetting here, 17.4 million voted Leave, majority in England of course, but the fact is, you're voting against it, with certain principles. Some of you because of the single market, some of you because of the customs union, some of you because of the common fisheries policy, some of you because you don't think that people knew what they were voting for the first time around. Caroline Lucas, you are insufferable. The independent group exists because of Brexit. It exists because you have, both parties, failed. You have failed to adhere to the requests of the people in the sense of accepting the result, Labour Party being the biggest culprit of this, who, unironically, while calling for a people's vote, abstained from voting on an amendment that would have given a people's vote. I find this level of hypocrisy and stupidity to be levels beyond what I had expected MPs to be. Apparently my expectations were a tad lower. Who would have imagined it? Now the 7 options on the table will start with revoking Article 50, which the UK can do. The petition has passed 3 million votes. Many of them are bots coming from countries that are not the United Kingdom. Legitimate. Theresa May has repeatedly said we shouldn't be revoking Article 50, and she's quite right. Whether she will or not is a different matter. Hell, at the time of recording she might not even be Prime Minister, with either David Lidington or pudge-faced Michael Gove, who is a snake. The next option would be a second referendum, which would see the decision-making taken back to the public for a final vote on the Brexit deal. So essentially, we're not voting on whether we stay in the EU or leave, because that's set in stone. No, this is the people's vote on the deal or no deal. But while other sources, like Sky News for example, have found that most Britons do not want a second EU referendum, with 56% of them saying they were opposed to it, others say the people still don't know what they're voting on. The third option is the Prime Minister's deal, which has been rejected twice, and will be presented to Parliament for the 3rd time, but this time with a condition. If they vote on it and accept it, then they can have an extension till May 22nd. If they reject it, well then panic mode begins, I guess. For me it's just hilarious, I guess. Can you not tell from my voice? Do I need my sarcasm sign for that as well? I personally believe the deal will be rejected. Yes, the gap has closed, but MPs are now 4 days away from leaving without a deal. We now know this is the only deal on the table because this government has utterly failed to negotiate. And by that I mean, get the EU to negotiate with us, because seriously, we are so much better than them. The next option is the Prime Minister's deal with a customs union. The problem with this being that you cannot cherry pick what aspects of the EU you can have. The problem here, and while it is good for tariffs and check duties, is that this means we can't trade abroad. The next deal being the Prime Minister's deal with the customs union and single market access. Again though, cherry picking. The next option is considered a Norway deal, the standard free trade agreement, where members of the European Free Trade Association, including Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, have access to the single market and limited EU trade barriers, but are not in the customs union. However, compromises do arise fishing waters especially, and we do like our waters. The final option, and this is the one I am okay with, is no deal, because then we renegotiate with the EU a new trade deal. And by that I mean they negotiate with us. We have the power. We are one of the most powerful economies on the planet. They come to us. We don't go begging to them. We don't come up with the solutions to them, for them. Fuck that. It also means that we can then trade with all the other countries in the world under WTO rules, something which I fully support. To the precious people that have voted on this .gov petition, you keep proving me right that you are insufferable Remoaners. Keep alienating yourselves from everyone else that is getting on with their lives after having voted on something already and you guys not accepting it. As far as I'm concerned, you guys piss me off because you think you speak for the people when really you're just feeding into the MP's own delusions that you guys are the people worth respecting and that you obviously are on their side. Let's not forget the number of celebrities that have come out since supporting the .gov petition, supporting the People's March, talking about how these are the only people worth engaging with. This is why you lost in 2016, because you pissed people like me off. I loved the argument made about the academic success. Might I remind you, people like me voted to leave, and I've got a master's degree, you fuckheads. This is now getting really fucking annoying. I do apologise to those who don't expect me to swear like this, but we are 4 days removed from leaving something that I am so glad to see the back of, and this is pathetic. Anyway, I hope you'll have a lovely Monday, and thank you all for listening.